generational transfer of farmland is a real problem. Most of the people that I talk with who have forest land have inherited it. They're second, third generation owners of it, and their interest may have varied. They may have diverged, and that becomes increasingly difficult for them to keep a goal of holding the land and the family together to pass on to their children. Once they get around that problem, they still have the problem of how to do it, how to pass it along without it going through a probate that will require lots and lots of money to hold the land together. I always like to see people looking out ahead and either forming some form of a corporation to do it or a trust to do it. If those owners don't take one of those steps or something like that, chances are that forest land's going to be busted up.
All right, so we're talking about legacy. And the question is, what will your legacy be?
My name is Adam Downey, and I'm an extension forester with Virginia Cooperative Extension. I'm housed in our northern district, serving the northern Piedmont and Shenandoah Valley of Virginia. And I work together with three of the colleagues throughout the state, and then in partnership with the Virginia Department of Forestry. This partnership with the Virginia Department of Forestry has resulted in one of our programs called Generation Next, where we're working with landowners. That's been our primary emphasis in the past 6-7 years, and getting them tools and understanding and connections to be able to pass their land on to the next generation. It's about awareness and education, not getting it all figured out. Just like when we're working with landowners and advising them to work with a professional forester to sell timber, we're advising landowners to work with professionals in this arena, the attorneys, the CPAs, and might also be your investment advisor, your forester. Build a team to help make this happen in a way that's going to best meet your goals.
Do you still need a will? Yes. You need to have your will, you need to have an executor name, but your will should be pretty short. Like I said last week, your trust is the meat and potatoes of your estate plan. Your trust basically would say, whatever I didn't get into my trust while I was alive, take it through the probate process and get it over there.
What happens if you don't have an estate plan? One of the things that seems to stick well with a lot of folks is that everybody has an estate plan, whether they think they do or not. You either have a plan that you have put in place and that you have been in charge of and been involved with your attorney in putting together, or you have what we call the default plan. And the Commonwealth of Virginia has an estate plan for everybody who doesn't have a will or other estate plan in place. And so if you were to pass away without an estate plan, your assets are going to go in accordance with state law. And typically that would be to your spouse. And if you have children from a prior marriage, they would receive a portion of your assets. If you're not married, your assets pass then to your next of kin, so your children or grandchildren. And so those are the default rules. One of the problems or concerns if you just go by the default rules is that you have this much greater chance of the property having to be divided, split up, and not stay intact. Generational planning to keep the land intact and getting it down to the next generation in a thoughtful way is really what the core of the estate plan for a typical landowning family should be. It's also important that you understand that you don't have to be an expert when you go in to see your estate planning attorney. You don't have to walk in and say, I think I need, or I want a trust, or I want a limited liability company. That's not your job. Your job is to do your best to convey your information to your attorney in an organized way and to let them know what your goals and hopes are for your property. And if you can start with that premise and go into that first meeting with some of those things sort of fleshed out in your mind as to how you wish your property to be transferred to the next generation, you're well on your way to establishing a great estate plan that can ensure a successful transition of the property intact to the next generation.
What do you see out there?
I'm Joel Cathy. This piece of property is called Long Branch Farm. It's 575 acres. Originally it was bought by my boss about 9 years ago. Aurelia and I bought a half interest in it 4 years ago. And then 2 years ago, we wound up buying the other interest. So at that point in time, she and I owned it together. We put it in an LLC called Long Branch Farm. Now that we owned it, we started working a little more in earnest and started thinking about down the road. We've got a daughter and a son-in-law, and now we have a grandchild that's a little over a year old. And so we started thinking about, what was going to happen. And I had attended a workshop, Generation Next, and that already had been thinking about what to do, and that kind of spurred me on much more. So we started going talking to an accountant and talking to a lawyer about what the possibilities were. Having it in an LLC gave us a lot of options, and so about 6 months ago, we deeded 10% interest in this LLC, gave it to our daughter and son-in-law. So they both each own 5% right now of Long Branch Farm, and down the road, hopefully they'll own more. This place probably wouldn't suit everybody, but it suits me. It's got a lot of variation to it, and hopefully it'll be a good place to raise a grandson.
Whoa!
That was a good one.
Well, I guess when my dad offered to gift us 10% of this property, we felt really thankful to be a part of it, and now it feels like it's more ours instead of just coming to visit his land. And we know that it'll be ours one day, but it does feel good to have it be a part of our family and our memories going forward.
Family forest landowners own about 10 million acres of forest land in Virginia, and how they feel about their property, the decisions they make, the options available to them, that's going to go a long way in determining what Virginia's forests look like now and on into the future. And if you break it down and take a close look at that forest land, about 70% of that, or 7 million acres, are owned by folks aged 55 years or older. So we know that in a couple of decades, all that land is going to change hands. And we also know that that is when forest land is most vulnerable to parcelization and ultimately conversion, is that point of intergenerational land transfer.
And we started our journey in 1968 when we were married. From Linda's estate, we were able to get 11 acres, and from land that was in my family, it was basically the first tract we ever bought, which was 6 acres. And then of course we went on from there to be successful in buying timber tracts in several counties in the state of Virginia. All that I own is in the state of Virginia. However, I have walked many tracts in Maryland, Delaware, Virginia, and North Carolina. But I don't think it's any place that I've ever been that is as beautiful as my home place. I've walked some tracts that have been very attractive and remind me of my home place, but none like my home place. And to watch my home place disappear saddened me at a very young age. And so what I wanted to do initially is buy my home place back, but then financially I found that I would never be able to do that. And so from that point on, I wanted to establish a legacy for the land and for my family by buying timberland in particular. I told my wife, I said, I think we need a trust. So we created the Jones Living Trust, and my third son will be in charge, Louis Minor Jones, who's named after my grandfather. And he will be followed by my oldest son, if he's not able to do what is necessary, who then will be followed by my second son. So I have a succession in place. What I'd like to do is keep this going as an investment or maybe a business. So there are some tracts that I will either put under an LLC or an FLP, Family Limited Partnership, or a limited liability corporation.
Forest landowners are different in a couple of significant aspects. First, they're different in that they are not just passing down money that can be divided up among different siblings or different family members. They're passing down a large asset that they want to keep whole and keep intact, and that some family members may want to be part of and some family members may not want to be a part of. The other aspect that's different for landowners is that they have this large asset that they're transferring that's going to require finances and money to upkeep over the years and for the next generation. So additional planning into how that happens and how it becomes affordable for the next generation is important.
This program that we have called Generation Next, it's about keeping forest intact, in forest, and in the family. We've been encouraged by working with many landowners who have had a lot of success in getting plans together, and they're confident about passing land on to the next generation and keeping it in forest and intact.
In my own case, my wife and I set up 2 trusts while she was still alive, in her name and mine, and we put all the real estate that we own in those trusts. When my wife died, the trust held everything together and passed to me as successor trustee. So my thinking, our thinking, was and is, we want to keep the place together. We want to keep it all in the family because the family feels strongly about keeping it. And this way, the 2 trusts owning it, and my daughters as successor trustees, have 2 grandchildren to come along, and with the conservation easement program we have in place, I think the trust and the easements go together. With those, that ensures that the generational transfer can take place easily, and will ensure that my final view of the place can come to pass.